This is how we should have ended the finale.
Oh my God, you're right. How did we not think of that?
There is a show that I watched this week that I want to talk about that Patrick has not seen, but it must be discussed. And that is the series finale of Curb Your Enthusiasm. I watched the series finale of Curb Your Enthusiasm. I didn't watch every single episode this season, but I watched a bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
Curb Your Enthusiasm is a show that's been running for over 20 years, Patrick Klepek. I remember watching the show in college, like with my roommates. We watched the show. The Curb Your Enthusiasm series finale was essentially a remake of the Seinfeld series finale. Seinfeld, a show, Patrick Klepek, tell me about your relationship with Seinfeld.
It's hard to convey what Seinfeld and its finale was as a cultural moment. Like, we're talking Avengers Endgame, like the whole world is like, this is not something that happens on television anymore. Maybe Game of Thrones is like the closest it's like kind of felt, but that was still a show watched by a fraction of the amount of people that were watching mainstream television shows like Seinfeld. And so, yeah, it was a enormous deal to sit down for this show, like a comedy show. Who cares what the final episode of a comedy show is? And well, the entire world wanted to find out what was Seinfeld's last joke going to be.
Yeah, it was a huge freaking deal. As you said, formative thing. It was when we had a monoculture back then. It was everyone knew about Seinfeld. Everyone was watching Seinfeld. 76 million people watched the Seinfeld series finale.
Unfathomable. Like, it is so many people.
I remember being crushingly disappointed by the series finale, or watching it and being like, that was it? The Seinfeld series finale is about the four main characters being on trial for not assisting somebody in need. And then the prosecution brings a parade of witnesses from these characters' past, testifying to how terrible people they are. That's the Seinfeld series finale.
Right. It ends with a shot of the four of them bickering in a jail cell, if I remember correctly.
That's right.
Yes. I was young enough that I don't remember my own personal thoughts on the finale as much as I remember the cultural response to the finale, which was, we compare, Seinfeld finale to Avengers Endgame. I'm sure people can quibble on how they felt about Endgame, but like, it was more or less like a beloved cultural moment, like a nice capstone to this, to the MCU and its cultural run. Seinfeld's, like, the finale was, well, that sucked. That was mostly like the response to that finale, and has lingered as a thing that Jerry Seinfeld, Larry David often talk about and comment. You've gotten the sense that they're a little bitter at the culture's response to how they wanted to end their show, which was, essentially to remind people, you may have been laughing at these people for the last 10 years, but do you remember that they're kind of just a bunch of unlikable assholes? And that's
right.
kind of what the show was trying to get across in its finality, was sort of not quite turning a lens on the audience, but certainly reminding them that these are some unforgivable like assholes. That's kind of what the finale was walking you through.
In my opinion, the cardinal sin was it wasn't very funny. Like, I think people didn't think it was very amusing, and so it felt kind of like a lecture. It felt very didactic, the series finale of Seinfeld. So Curb season 12 just came to an end, and in the first episode of the season, Larry David gives a bottle of water to a woman standing in line waiting to vote in Georgia. And this is against the Georgia law about, against election fraud. Like, you can't help people out who are, waiting to vote. And the entire season is engineered around this finale where Larry David goes on trial and a bunch of people testify about how Larry David's a shitty person. And it is basically a redo of the Seinfeld series finale. It ends a little bit differently. There's a few details that are different. One nice touch is that there's the person who he gave water to, one of the nice people, like the show figures out a way for her to turn against him, which is like very funny. But it's basically the same thing. And Patrick Klepek, I didn't find the series finale of Curb Your Enthusiasm particularly funny, but I admire the will it takes to hang on to basically a grudge against the American public for over 2 decades.
I love it.
And to be like, I was right. Larry David, was right. You were wrong. This is funny and or a good way to end a TV series, and I'm going to do it again over 20 years later.
And look at his track record. More often than not, he is right about what things are funny. And there was a clip going around from Jerry Seinfeld at some point, either early this year or last year, that had people speculating that maybe the Seinfeld was going to get together for like a Super Bowl ad, and the way that they'll do like reunions for bits like that. Even after Curb Your Enthusiasm essentially did. It's the one season I wanted to go back and watch because I love Seinfeld so much. They did essentially another season of Seinfeld embedded within Curb Your Enthusiasm during its run. And the speculation was, oh, maybe there'll be some sort of Seinfeld reunion that's happening. And as it turns out, that was just indicating that Jerry Seinfeld already knew that Larry David was going to double down on this premise for a finale. And so the fact that it maybe works a little bit better is, I don't know, is I love the fact that he decided to just take a whack at it again. I think there is something no more Larry David, given the sense of humor that was embedded. Like Seinfeld as a show works. Yes, it's a collaboration, like hugely between Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David, but there's more Larry David than Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld is the face of it, but I think a lot of the humor, like especially watching Curb Your Enthusiasm, you just see how much of it really was
right.
Larry David, and how much is missing from Seinfeld in some of its later seasons when Larry David was less creatively involved in as that show was ending its run. So I fucking adore the fact, like, who cares if it's good? I love the fact that he just doubled down, because this is probably like one of the last great things, like the last big things that he does. Like, I'm sure he will still do creative works. Maybe he'll get the itch to do another Curb Your Enthusiasm. I think not, actually, because of, now that cast members are actually passing away, you know, I think that makes...
He's 76 years old at this point.
He looks old, right? Like I was watching some behind the scenes clips of the finale, and it's like, yeah, like you can see him. He is 76 and you can see it. And I think that's a beautiful way to go out. Like, that is, like, he's earned the right to put up two middle fingers and say, I was right.
As a summation to the show, it's fine, right? Allison Janney appears in the finale and has a stare down with Larry David. That's fun. Richard Lewis has a nice plot line in the episode. Jerry Seinfeld shows up in the episode and riffs with Larry David for a little bit, and that's nice. So as a summation to the series, it's fine. It's not great. It's not terrible. It's not particularly funny, in my opinion. But as a meta story, like if I didn't know the meta story, I'd be like, okay, that was okay. Like, it was perfectly adequate, a perfectly cromulent ending for a very good show. But as a meta story of Larry David's, like, you were wrong. I've been saying it for 2 decades, and I'm going to say it again in the most definitive way possible. You got to admire it. I'm not even mad. I'm impressed, right? Like the audacity, the tenaciousness. My opinions change over time, Patrick Klepek. I don't know about you. Like, sometimes I'll think something was really good, and then over time I'll be like, maybe it wasn't that good, or something was bad, and I'll revisit my opinion. This is a thing where he's like, the Seinfeld finale was always good. It was never bad. I knew it was always good. I've always known, and now you will know again. That's it's amazing. So,
it makes sense as a sort of a period on the sort of arc of Larry David as a comedian, so central in our lives, where Seinfeld, he is a behind the scenes creative, right? Like, he is, that's why, like, it's so interesting to watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, which I've watched, a handful of seasons. It's like, you just see, like, oh, I understand Seinfeld so much more watching this show.
You understand the engine that was driving it, right? In some ways,
like, even though Curb Your Enthusiasm is like prompts that lead to improv, whereas like Seinfeld is like written scripts that I'm sure had a much lesser amount of improvisation because it was filmed in front of a studio audience. It was a different era of shooting comedy, but the fact that he's front and center in Curb, he is the main character, and like, so for him to bring that all full circle to this moment as he kind of exits out as being probably a predominant force like in comedy, I think that's just beautiful to me.
Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.